What is going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of SCP Meta. I am your host, SCP-CRNP, aka Lack of Lepers. Want to thank you very, very much for joining us. It has been a crazy few weeks, as you are very aware. So we're going to get into all that. Do want to mention that if you are watching either live or ex post facto, we do have a live phone number that you can call. This is a call-in show meant to be sort of a people's talk show where you can share your thoughts, your questions, your criticisms, trollage, whatever. The number that you can dial for that is 316-444-3115. Again, 316-444-3115. And we will be happy to take your call live. If we are not live on the air while you are calling, you are free to leave a voicemail, and we will happily listen to that live on the show with reactions, given that it's not, a little too raunchy or vulgar. Now, before we get into the events of the week, which were historic for sure, let's begin by doing our local news here. So let me pull this up on the screen and we can get going. So just wanted to mention, since it's kind of right around the corner here, that our first contest that we're very, very happy about is about to start accepting submissions. This is INDIECON. It is the first independent containment fiction contest, and so you are able and allowed to write in any format that you'd like. If you're more familiar with SCP, if you're more familiar with RPC, if you want to write some limfic, tales, if you want to draw, do some illustrations or art, that's all accepted. You can also do original containment fiction formats if you have your own, as a sort of self-promotion while entering the contest. Now, the dates of this, they start in just a few days, 2 days, on the 30th of May. And anybody who would like to join this can send their submissions to this email address down here. This flyer is on our Twitter. It's pinned at the top. Our Twitter is Confic Magazine. Just Google Confic Magazine Twitter. That should get you there. And so there's some information here for you. Submissions will be open for a month, and then we do about a week of voting. That'll take place in our Discord server. And so you can check that out there and participate if you don't regard being present in that server as politically radioactive. So I do want to mention that that is coming up. We're very excited about it. We do have a lot of people who have expressed interest in it and who will be submitting something. So just very, very excited to see what will happen. I want to go ahead and answer a question that a couple of people have asked me. I will not be entering this contest. I will not be voting in this contest, and I will not be offering crit for this contest. I think that's only fair. So just a FYI. Okay, and then so for other local news, Confic Magazine wise, we didn't really have a Confic Magazine article this week. I was on vacation all week, and so I decided to take it easy. Could have had something out, but I decided let's just give it a rest. So we didn't have anything posted this week. Of course, our most recent article being that expose about Bright. So if you haven't read that, check it out. I think most people have. All right, so the next thing on the list that we always do to start the show off with is the recommended read of the week. Now, if you're not aware of it, we have started a program, and I say we because I have help in this. Oh, look at this. We're getting already probably what is a troll call. So let's see what is coming here. Let me first of all answer this. Now, don't say anything if you're on the other line because I haven't turned the volume up quite yet. And I'll have to get into that. Oh, it was a missed call. Sorry about that. Yeah, call me back. I'll be happy to answer that. I want to thank Jane Bond for showing up in the Discord server. Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so we'll wait for them to call us back. I'm sure they will probably have their automated crank call algorithm ready on the go. Here we go. 1 second.
Yes. Hello. This is Chinese buffet calling.
Hey, hold on a second. I got to turn you up.
You eat way too much.
Sorry, you're not listening to me. You got to hold on.
You're not allowed back anymore.
All right, hold on. Let me turn you up so people can hear you. All right, try again. Here we go. Could you repeat everything you just said, please?
You bad customer. You start talking. This is not homeless shelter. This is restaurant. You eat all expensive food. You eat all that crab leg.
Hello.
You take so much food and not even eat all. I throw out full plates when I leave your table.
What's up, Almarduk? Thanks for joining. We got a call. They'd like to get on to me about eating at the restaurant, but it's so good. It's so good that I can't help going there. I tell them every week that I'm going to stop, but I can't. I don't know. I can't find it out. I need Jesus. James Bond, what's going on? That was just a call we took. No big deal. Yeah, that's been happening the last couple of weeks. I imagine it will continue. Once again, we're more than happy to accept troll calls like that. That means people will watch it if just to tune in for that. So more than happy for that. But do want to welcome Almarduk. Thanks for joining us here.
Good to be here.
Yeah, and thank you once again for joining us last night. So right back on topic here. So last night we did our weekly event where we look at all of the articles that came out of the SCP that week. And so I had a lot of help from my friends, my buddies, and so Almarduk was part of that. And if you haven't checked that out, go check it out. It's on the Twitch channel, SCP Meta. Also on our YouTube channel. Check that out if you haven't seen it. So once again, thanks for doing that, and thanks for showing up again today. That's nice of you.
You're welcome. It was very fun to do.
And so one of the things we draw out of that is an article recommendation of the week. And because I didn't read all of them, maybe, Almarduk, I'll get you to recommend one as well of the ones you read. But of the ones I read, and this is really about a week old at this point, just kind of dipping into last week before the Wikidot outage occurred. But this one, SCP-6189, I thought was the best that I read in the last 2 weeks. This is really an article about sort of ritualistic paraphernalia that dips into the Davite sort of lore and takes it some interesting places. And it's just very, very well constructed, a brilliant read. It has just a wealth of vocabulary, which is not something that I see a lot of these days. And was just very, very enjoyable to read. So I recommend for this week SCP-6189. Looks like it could use a little more attention and love. I think certainly this rating is criminally low for how good this article is. But Almarduk, what do you think?
I know I'm going to struggle to read this because every article that has that kind of table organization feels so long, despite not needing to be so. Also, it's always just kind of a sign of poor formatting because those tables look ugly as fuck. But they say nothing about the quality of the article. This is just me complaining.
I share the same hesitation when I see this. I mean, I would say 4 out of 5 articles that I read that are presented this way don't need to be this way and sort of end up overstaying their welcome. But that's one of the things I noticed about this review when I did this on the show last night too, is that the read is very smooth. It really is very well propelled by the quality of the writing, and each subsequent tab is actually much shorter than the first. So at least it does sort of streamline itself in that regard. But yeah, I would encourage you to not get hung up on that. Yeah, this is a really, really, really good article by I can't remember the name of the person who wrote it. AssertiveRoland is the individual who wrote that. So great job.
Wait, that's AssertiveRoland?
Yeah. Do we know that person?
That's the original author of 140.
Really? 140?
Yes.
SCP-140. Let's go there. I had no idea.
140, that's an unfinished article. The original Davite article.
You are kidding me.
No.
Wow. Okay, let's go verify this so that my mind can be blown here. Yeah, holy shit. Whoa. Oh my god. I had no idea. Thank you for that information. Wow. Well, no wonder it's so damn good. It really took the Deva lore in places that hadn't seen light of day in a long time. So I'm looking at the profile here just to see. Looks like, my gosh. I mean, have they been around since then, or did they come back? Do you know?
I know he's been around for some time, leading up on the Davites. He's kind of glad about how they were taken. Mm-hmm. I don't know much more.
Yeah, I'm looking at the wiki profile here, and it looks like there's a lot of activity on something called the Eclipse wiki, which I don't really know a lot about. Can't seem to find it here. This is the Eclipse wiki, Moonlit Worlds Eclipse wiki. This wiki exists to document the setting, lore, and background material for the Moonlit World campaign setting. So if you're a fan of checking out sort of Confic adjacent material, this is something that author has been participant in.
Oh, this is a D&D wiki, like some kind of tabletop.
Oh, okay. Well, they're very active there, but it looks like they've been pretty consistently active on Wikidot. Maybe not at the SCP Wiki, but in the last few years for sure. Decent amount of activity here. So,
yeah,
wow.
They tend to post on the Davite Hub or 140 or forums about the Davites, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we see a large gap of time between 2010 and then the next time is 2018. So, and then there's just a very short block of 2018 activity, and then a lot more activity starting in 2021 with this D&D wiki. But so yeah, it actually legitimately has been a very long time since this individual, I think, dropped something on the wiki. So, wow, yeah, great catch. I had no clue. I thought this was a new author. I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
Shows how much I know. But yes, that's really interesting trivia. And yeah, so without knowing who that author was, I do recommend that article. I think it's just really, really well written, and so maybe this is why. But once again, that was SCP 6819. Almarduk, do you have a recommendation just from the ones you read? I know it's sort of spur of the moment dropping that on you, but what would you say your recommendation was from last night?
Actually, let me check the number because I completely forgot about it. But I know what I want to recommend.
And while Almarduk is finding that, I'll point to just some other Confic communities, sort of to tisk them in some ways. Of course, Wikidot being down didn't help for a good portion of this month, but RPC really hasn't posted anything this month. It's been a month to this day since anything was actually posted there. So I'm a little nervous about that. I hope that they get some activity up, and if not, maybe I'll jump on in that. So, and then same situation with the SCP commune. We haven't really had an article from them since late December. Of course, I'm a big fan of this read. I think it's generally a little kinder, little better, if only in terms of just how much content is there. It's just a lot more consumable, I think, and tends to be a little better quality, I think, than your regular article.
It's weird with RPC because we are always writing something, but getting to post it has been getting like a lot harder recently.
Now, why is that, do you think?
I think it's a mixture of real life issues and because COVID stopped, and now people are in their real lives, and May specifically is a very intense time.
Interesting.
Also, that over time we're getting like more denser critiques, we're getting more picky, to say in some way.
Well,
picky.
hey, once again,
that's how you pronounce that.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I think that's a nice counterbalance to SCP because once again, like we talked about last night, it's just a fire hydrant's flow of material coming out of the SCP Wiki. It's just nice to go somewhere a little more relaxed, less urban, less urbanized, less of a metropolis when it comes to the density of people and articles that come out there. So that's cool as long as RPC is still.
I think it's a little bit extreme, but I agree with you. I just think we should try to, give some. I don't know how to phrase this in English. Like, give some space for articles, because the way we're reacting right now feels like it's impossible to catch up to if you have a busy life, which I do, and I completed like 6 or 4 articles in the last month or two, and I have posted none of them because they just didn't do well in critique, and I don't know how to fix them.
Well, that's good. I mean, like I said, it's certainly not the best thing to judge everything else's pace by SCPs because it's just cattywampus. It's just hazed, crazy. So yeah, but I do want to see something come out of RPC. I think I'm getting a little uncomfortable with how long it's been. But okay, well, hey, before we move on, Almarduk, why don't you give us your SCP recommendation for what you read?
Yes, my SCP recommendation is SCP-6753, which, wait a minute, it haven't gotten the title actually. 6753 is called Intricacies, and it's a world-building article about werewolves. It's a very interesting read that's reminiscent of the best Third Law articles, but not necessarily about technology, more about mythology and a world where werewolves are normal. It's a very dense read. Seeing its length won't do it justice. It's very short, but it's a very enjoyable if you like clever details.
Yeah, check it out. Good world building for sure. Little dense, like Almarduk said, but nice and short. Just packs quite a punch. And the author here, Cold Nights, is someone who I recognize. I think this is actually somebody who we shouted out in our Discord server. They had an article 2 weeks ago, I think, that I really enjoyed, and that I think may have been a candidate for the recommendation of the week. So this is an author to keep an eye out for. Cold Nights is certainly up and coming, I think, with some really good stuff. All right, and then just to round out our local discussion, I do want to kind of shill this of myself, just to make a point. This was posted on May 22nd, and this was when Wikidot was down. So I really maybe tried a little too hard to push this on people, but just to make the point that, containment fiction can exist without Wikidot. It's there is such thing as indie Confic, and that's really what our upcoming contest is trying to celebrate. But this is just an example of that. It's also an example of an entry that we might see in this upcoming contest, whose theme is statues. So just throwing that out there. That is something that is accessible, even if Wikidot is down. So we were happy to put that out. And then the last thing to say is that Liminal Archives' horror contest is still going on. The submissions have ended, but voting has not ended quite yet. So that'll continue, I think, until the end of this month. So I think a couple more days of voting, and I think the winner of this contest should be announced on the 1st of next month. So if you haven't checked out the entries, go check them out. This was a really fun contest.
Yeah, the time for voting was extended because of the outage.
Yeah,
it was supposed to end almost a week ago, I think.
Well, good call. I think that's the right thing to do for sure. Jane Bond says this is off topic, which is not true. Nothing's really off topic here because it's a call-in show. But have you guys read SCP-6488? So let me open that up real quick, if my computer will comply. It looks like it won't comply. So, but it looks, I just from the image, I don't know if I've read this one. Tell us about it, Jane Bond. What did you want to bring out by recommending this?
Well, that's Eighth Commandment.
Oh,
it's the new admonition.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Is this my computer?
I would not open it if I were you, because the first time I did it, it froze my PC.
That's what's going on. Oh yeah. So 6488. Yeah, thanks. That's the new admonition article. Yeah. So I posted a blog post about this article that goes into some detail about it. And then last week's show, not this Friday, not yesterday's show, but the week previous to that, which of course you can go see on our Twitch and then lives at home permanently on our YouTube channel, goes into just an exhaustive walkthrough and tour of this article. And basically I don't give it a very good review, but that's just my take on this. We do have a call, so let's take this. I do assume it'll be a prank call, but let's tell them to hold on. Oh man, I just missed that call. Why don't you call back? I'll try to answer it that time.
What a shame.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so yeah, Jane Bond, what did you think of SCP-6488? Obviously, it's a pretty successful article in terms of the rating. I think it was subjected to a pretty strong sort of marketing campaign on things like Twitter and social media. And, if you like admonition, which a lot of people do, this article is going to hit every checkbox, I think, for people who like to read admonition articles. So this might be for you. It wasn't for me, but might be for you. Oh, look, there's my logo. All right, so we got okay, he left before I could mute that
Wuhan
guy.
Solo.
Yeah. Wuhan Solo, wonder if it was something to do with the China restaurant. China
Might be.
restaurant phone call that we got. Okay. Anyways, so moving on. So the biggest news, obviously, of the week was that Wikidot was down. Obviously, this happened late last week. It was down from Thursday to about Tuesday. And at the beginning of the week, Wikidot sort of came out. This is on the 23rd, so this was Monday, and said, good news, everyone. After a busy weekend, we're going to bring Wikidot back online later today. We'll have to disable search and email notifications, but we'll keep working on restoring them too. And so this obviously was very liked, very celebrated. I don't know if you know this, but Wikidot, their follower count went from less than 1,000, probably somewhere in the upper hundreds, to where it is now at about 4,300, just throughout the course of this this break of the whole servers and people coming back. So this was first said to us, and basically people came kind of to it with some optimism and hope that it would come back. But of course, Monday came and went, and that was basically it. Nothing really had come back online yet, and then this was the next notice from the database. So the Wikidot says, our database just gave us some serious chills. We have to restore the data once more because it appears inconsistent. No worries, we have all this stuff, yada, yada, yada. So it was a little touch and go there for a while, and I think after the promise that was given, which probably was a bad idea on Wikidot's end, you don't really want to promise something that you can't, satisfy in a timely fashion, and then sort of this two-step of not being able to follow through with that promise, I think got a lot of people really kind of almost frightened at whether or not Wikidot would come back or not.
People were certainly afraid that something would go wrong because that's what's always the case with Wikidot. I don't think it's unjustifiable.
No, not at all. And then we have others like this, Billeth on Twitter, saying things like, questioning the backups. What happened to the minute-to-minute backups that y'all talked about? Where's the off-site physical repository? So people just sort of, rightfully, like you say, rightfully sort of had a little bit of uncomfort and discomfort with Wikidot. It was nice to see the team be sort of revitalized and come back and, sort of take responsibility in some ways for really the negligence that Wikidot has suffered for the last, several years. But the question remains as to, is this going to happen again? And is the team back? Are they only sort of an emergency response team? I think really a long shadow has been cast over Wikidot as a result of this whole process.
Yeah, I'm very much not sure because they have this spirit of activity, but there's no way of telling how long they will actually care.
Yeah, and not that like follower count on Twitter should be really a motivating factor ultimately, but maybe the fact that so many people came out and sort of showed their support. Like I said, their Twitter follower count quadrupled essentially, more than that really. So
yeah, people give a shit.
Yeah, they really do, and it was kind of quiet until the need to express that came out. So maybe that'll inspire them to be a little more present. I don't know. That would be nice to see. But we do have other people throughout the Twitter, and we'll be looking a lot at Twitter today, just because once again a lot of the communities themselves were down this week. So a lot of the commentary really kind of relegated itself to Twitter. But you have other people. This is Nat Voltaic, excuse me, known SCP author, who's asking, what are the backup plans? And correctly states that Blue Soul is running an automatically updated archive of the site. But who knows if that's actually being updated consistently these days? I don't really know, to be honest with you. But this is a good question to ask. I don't know if there's a good answer to this. And once again, I think the main thing to take away from the whole event is, it's the staff, for example, at SCP Wiki is interested in putting on a policy pause for things like a charter rewrite when we really should be putting all hands on deck to get independent platforms.
Yeah, something that I think is important to realize about this. Wikidot coming back, like the staff coming back to fix their site, it's not good news. It's not as good news as we would expect, because it's just revealing to us how dire stuff is on their end. And some discussion I have had in these days really puts all of this into perspective, because you know how search in Wikidot is like infamously terrible and always times out?
Mm-hmm.
That is because the search algorithm that they have is one that goes result by result by result. So if you have, let's say, 1,000 pages in a single Wikidot site, it sorts them alphabetically and runs through them until it finds one that matches your search. Oof. And then it displays a result. So you can see how this can get very, very quickly out of control when you have a site that's the size of SCP.
Yeah,
it's certainly it's almost amateurish, I think, from what I got from other people I've asked. It's kind of a nightmare-inducing system, because it has no way to work in any scale except like prototype.
Yeah, it seems it's really lacking a lot of the things that would be crucial to it being sort of a long-term investment. You know, you don't want to invest in something that's not put your whole livelihood and some people's sense of importance and self-esteem, you know, invest it into something that's really so fragile, as to be hacked by somebody that goes down for almost a week, just because somebody wants to attack it. And then, of course, there's other residual questions here too, like, you know, if someone is interested in hacking Wikidot, which is, of course, the official line, you know, who's to say that won't happen again? If this is something of a malicious nature, then we would expect the individual to keep trying again and again until maybe they have something against Wikidot. I don't really know. I tend to think that this was sort of incidental and almost you know, collateral, probably, of something else. But you know, there's
I think we know right now that it was a white hat hacker. Like,
okay.
They did it to show Wikidot there was a vulnerability before someone else could.
Now,
I have no confirmation of this. I have no proof, but that's what people that I trust, staff and SCP-ES, are telling me. So I guess it's kind of a trustworthy source, but
yeah,
there's like no way to know for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've heard.
Personally, I would, one, change my password, which I haven't done yet. I really should.
Yeah,
and two, archive everything
Absolutely.
You like, everything you have written, everything in your sandboxes, because there's no way of telling when it might go just poof away.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I hate to use the word prepper, you know, but you need to adopt a little hint of prepperism when it comes to just taking all of your articles and finding a way to keep them in the event that Wikidot goes down. Just planning for the future, planning for something catastrophic to happen like that. Because it didn't happen this time, but there will be another time where this happens and Wikidot does not come back, period.
Unless they just get their move on throughout the next few months, maybe. But even then, there's like no way of telling. Just be safe, make sure to be safe, because there won't be a lot of time to regret it if it goes down and something happens to their database or something along those lines.
Yeah, and so this definitely should be the wake-up call. If you hadn't thought about it before, don't know how you couldn't have thought about it before, but if you hadn't, you know, your alarm bells should be ringing. This should be really action time. Then Billeth has this to say, something like what you were saying, Almarduk. Let this be a lesson to always index a meticulous degree if you're going to do so. Creating clustered indexes through unique columns can save you some pain and time when verifying integrity, but not so if your indexes are suboptimal. This is basically a different language to me, but I wanted to put it on the screen because this obviously means something to someone, and I think this is probably a technician's you know, post-mortem analysis of what could have gone better.
But I understand that an index is more or less a table. I think they are referring to unique pages. I might be wrong here. I'm not a technician. I have not studied web design, so take my word with a grain of salt. I will most likely be wrong, but I understand they are referring to like a table that contains all pages and services that Wikidot has, and they are organized in such a way that they are hard to to actually use for their purpose. In general, what this is telling us, which is important, is that Wikidot has been developed with a certain approach that indicates a lack of adherence to some very important tenets of programming and development in computers in general, which is that things should always be designed a certain way so that they are A, human readable, and B, future proof. Future proofing is a very important part of programming. Making sure that your code is modular, it serves its purpose, but doesn't just serve its purpose because it might do so, but then it's hard to edit, it's hard to read, and it might do so with a lot of delay, consuming a lot of resources. And what Bill's post is telling us is that they did not take into account a lot of important practices like this.
Yeah. And we've seen this for a while. I think you don't have to be, technically proficient to kind of understand that Wikidot is crumbling, and it's definitely has not been future-proofed, I think, very well. And, is this a scare? Yes, but it's really something more than that. This is an indicator that if SCP does not get off of Wikidot, if RPC doesn't get off of Wikidot, if the rest of the containment fiction communities can't find a way to translate what they've done to a different platform, a more stable platform, we're going to lose it all one day, and we're only going to have what happened to be archived in something like the Wayback Machine as sort of an archaeological reference that is thoroughly in the past. So I do hope to see some sort of more official response from something like the SCP Wiki staff when it comes to the allocation of resources, because this is there's only one way this is going to end, and unless you prepare for it, it's going to be ugly and messy. All right, but of course it wasn't all dire on the Twitter. People obviously took the opportunity to have fun with it. This is once again Billith, who we thank for all these good tweets. And this one says, "It's 2022, the distant future. A new mode of existence for SCP has taken hold, the offsite-only foundation. The OOF process for building articles is dynamic and unique. On Twitter, articles are assembled line by line in cold-posted collabs, one tweet per person. I'll begin." And so this was just a funny take to do it. Twitter was a nice sort of haven that people ran into, obviously to keep up communication, which is what it's good for. But it doesn't seem like it's going to be able to house something like containment fiction well. So there's that.
You say?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we can get really aphoristic again, back to the roots. 4chan. Text limit. That might be interesting to see.
Oh, if only.
I think lurked would be fine. Probably find a good way to do that. But anyway, so finally, Wikidot came back up. This was the 24th, which was Tuesday. They had some issue that was not related to the hack. So that's another thing that kind of points to me towards a white hat sort of thing. I think someone who had a grip on the vulnerability of Wikidot could have taken down Wikidot in a much more dramatic and permanent fashion. So it's interesting to note that. I do want to thank and welcome Soraya Stuff for joining us. Appreciate you being here. All right, so then after that, Wikidot came up not too long, finally online. This is Tuesday. Kudos for the patience. Obviously, everybody was very thankful about this. And then things didn't get quite started right up, at least the SCP. This is an archive from that day that says, following a Wikidot server outage this weekend, the SCP Wiki is under a temporary content freeze, no new pages, yada, yada, yada edits, just until the staff has ascertained the integrity of the site. So that lasted for a little while. You can see here on the new pages that the new articles didn't start showing up again until the 25th, which was the next day. But that was temporary, and as you can see, and once again, thank you to Harmony and Almarduk. Really, the floodgates opened. We had a tremendous number of posts that were ready. Who came.
I'm very glad we did this like the exact week we had the outage, because I don't think I could get through like an entire week's worth of articles. I just don't think I could.
I know, it's tough. It's really tough. And once again, this was a lot more. Usually we see an average of about 2 to 3 posted a day, and here we have, call it 7 for here, and then of course the last few days have kept that pace. So certainly it is, it's going to compensate for the lost time. So, but yeah, I really appreciate that. All right. And then this is something that was interesting too. Once again, Billeth, very, very good source of information here on Twitter, but it seems as though not everything went back to normal. So this is a public service announcement that happened just a few days ago. It says, PSA, pages are blanking themselves out on the wiki. It appears to not affect your data at the moment, though you still have to confirm that your content hasn't reverted if it blanks after an edit. So previous to this, we're all familiar with the wiki.non edit, where you try to change something and it doesn't listen to you and it doesn't actually change the page. But this seems like to be a worsening of that issue. It seems as though when you edit it, if I'm reading this correctly, it'll blank the entire page, and you have to sort of try to work with that.
Yeah, so this isn't ominous at all.
No, yeah, bugs. Hey, what's up, wiki.dot? So it's like it's almost like when you plug one hole, another one comes out. It's like a game of whack-a-mole that wiki.dot is playing, and it's not going to end well. There's just no
Also,
way.
I remember because people in the backroom site pointed this out. Pages isn't the question mark bug character. The one that's like a diamond with a question mark inside. Any page using that character specifically will break.
Really?
Not sure how that happened, but apparently that's what's happening.
Now, one of my old favorites, the Universal Instruction Manual, which is an SCP article that was written a while ago by Literally Mechanical, that features those characters in it. Looks like here's that character. So it looks like they're still there, which is nice to see. But yeah, you're right. I mean,
I think it's the editing. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Well, either way, once again, alarm bells should be ringing. It doesn't look like we're totally out of the woods, and even if you think you are, once again, it's just going to be a matter of time before something like that happens. I think we've situated ourselves pretty well here with things like Confic magazine. Of course, that was intentionally supposed to be somewhat of a fallback hub. In the inevitability that wiki.dot does go down, there can be at least some centralization of content, like what we're doing here today. That's really one of the main points of it. So I think that was sort of a test run for us. I think it went really well, honestly. All right, and then here's some other memes. Never ask a woman her age, a man his salary, what an SCP author was doing between the dates of the 19th and the 24th of May, and that's when it was down. So. People were having a good time.
I was reading House of Leaves, so
yeah,
it was arguably like much better.
Yeah, and so a lot of people took the opportunity to get out and do other things. This is Darnell, who you might know, saying something like, I see myself spending less and less time with friends as they get busier, schedules no longer line up. I wish I hadn't taken those times for granted. Please, for the love of God, don't stay cooped up on a computer. So this is one day after the wiki.dot comes back on. So it seems as though, whether it's reading a book that you haven't read in a while, getting to writing that you have maybe put off after a while, there were some real good silver linings to the whole wiki.dot collapse thing. And I think some point down the future, when it does die, and hopefully people have prepared well, but the dust sort of settles and the foliage starts to grow back amongst the ruins, maybe it will be seen as, on the whole, hopefully a healthy thing for people's mindsets and psychologies.
Yeah, I have been telling me for a long time that I should read some more conventional fiction. I should actually get to reading some real fiction, and I just never have, because I always have something to write, something to read, something to critique. So that outage was actually a very nice wake-up call, because it got me to read one of my favorite articles of the last few favorite books. There you have it. I'm calling books articles. I'm fucking insane.
Yeah, so it'll mess with you, man.
One of my favorite books in my entire life.
Yeah, and so we had fun too. We had a good time getting things out and doing things that we wouldn't have been doing otherwise. But yeah, so on the Confic magazine Twitter, we had fun along with everybody else. So for example, this was Shaggy Dreadlocks, SD Lock, saying, it's been 3 days without the wiki. The streets are crawling with SCP authors, unwashed, jittering, panhandling for upvotes. Any will do. Just please give me that hit of dopamine and validation to the passerby without any shred of decency. -1, I say coldly. And then we have others, the Great Hippo. The streets are extended gutters, and the gutters are full of cold posts. And when the forms finally scab over, all of the original characters will drown. The author inserts will look up and cry and say, "Save us!" And I will look down and whisper, "No vote, lol." So, yeah, it was fun to see people's takes on these things. We tried to have fun with this too, with some memes and stuff like that. Here's Michael Frakowiak, Thanos snapping the Russian branch out of existence, which we'll get to in just a second. But yeah, so just open Wikidot. I observed flowers spontaneously appearing and blooming over 90% of the surface of the page. I've described these flowers as vibrant, bright, beautiful. Other words to this effect. The weather is clear globally. I recognize an ambient temperature. Other stuff like that. We declared May 19th to be a yearly day of observation for the Wikidot blackout of 2022. On this day, people will refrain from accessing Wikidot and beg for reads out of respect for our fallen author brethren, perished of upvote deprivation. Things like this. Day 3. And
That's
this is
Lily's proposal, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, good catch. And this is what reminded me of what you said. Reminded me of Day 3. None of the books have any upvotes. They all must be terrible. Collapsibles are nested within collapsibles. I've learned that they call these things pages. You have to credential unlock turn every page by hand. It's a little excessive, but it's a neat CSS trick +1. Those are books. But everybody was having a good time with this. It was really, really refreshing and enjoyable to see people. It's one way to cope with the anxiety, of course. But it was nice to see people sort of play off this and have a good spirit, good attitude about it. We'll skip this. Just more commentary about it. Yeah, this is once again a question we were asking. At Wikidot, will y'all, as in the devs and Mr. Frakowiak, be sticking around to work on Wikidot beyond restoring it to how it was before, to perform much-needed servicing and updating of the platform from now on, or will things go back to how they were before? What do you think?
Well, we have heard nothing from them in the last 4 days, so there's no way to know. If I were them, I would be telling people exactly what we plan to do and exactly what happened, but since this hasn't happened, I don't have a lot of hopes right now.
Yeah.
At all. But, it's too early to tell. Who knows if they might just come up with some kind of post-mortem in a few weeks or a month. Usually those things are done in a day, but it's Wikidot, so a month of time is...
Maybe
it's
a
fair.
year.
It's
maybe
fair.
A year. Yeah, I mean, because the last time they were really active on something like, let's say, their Twitter, was 2018 when there was a bug, and it lasted for a few hours. So this obviously was much more catastrophic than that. Nothing had been down on Wikidot for that long before. So, it seems as though, unfortunately, as of right now, we don't have any more information to go on other than to assume that the dev team is kind of like an emergency response team that will come if someone is dying in something like cardiac arrest and come and resuscitate the individual. But then, of course, once that individual is resuscitated, they leave because it's not their job to continue that care. Obviously, it's just for the emergency.
Yeah, so if you have heart cancer, they will do nothing to save you until you're dying.
Right. Yeah, you can have sclerotic, arteries, all, every single one of them blocked. Wikidot's not going to bat an eye. It's only when the catastrophe happens. So I think that's not a good sign, like you say. And then to shift gears just a bit, so the next thing that sort of happened that was a little alarming in its own right, and the way I would put this is that Wikidot, through what I would say bad leadership, really is probably the phrase to use, they converted what would have been at least a temporary technical issue into now what is a permanent political issue. Because what they decided to do, if you don't already know, is that they decided to block Wikidot from anyone available in Russia and Belarus. So anybody from those two regions is unable to access Wikidot because of the actions of maybe one, maybe two, a small contingency of individuals who did this hack, white hat or not. Wikidot, in all its wisdom, has decided to punish every single person in that region for the actions of just a few people.
Yeah, I have my suspicions that this is some kind of more of a political act for their homeland in Poland rather than something that they actually benefit from, because the Russian community is one of the most active in Wikidot. There's a lot of Russian sites, not just SCP, and it's bizarre that it would block one of their most profitable, one of their best avenues of profit.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah, exactly. And
I think that might
really
be temporary. Maybe it's a show of something. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope so. And that's really what somebody says here. So this is the actual post that confirmed it. It had sort of been swirling around as a rumor with people from those areas reporting that they couldn't access it and receiving that error message, that we just looked at. But this was the tweet that sort of made it official, gave it sort of an ostensible reference to point to, and says that following the recent hacking events, increasing wave of abuse from Russia, state-level disinformation in light of the war in Ukraine, and disrespect of human rights and sovereignty, we decided to close access to Wikidot from Russia and Belarus territory. So this really is in lockstep. I think a little delayed, obviously. It's odd that it shows up now in some ways, but it's in lockstep with a lot of the sort of corporate level, state level cancel culturing that's going on with things as a result of the war, which of course we won't get into here. But the responses to this were interesting. Someone came back and once again expressed the same concern that we have been here, which is, any other plans for security. There's a screen cap here of the fact that Wikidot is not really a secure protocol at all, with modern browsers recommending that you don't input any sensitive information. And to your point, Almarduk, this individual says performative activism is more important than basic security features, I guess, which I thought was saying it pretty well.
It's just the right way to put it.
Yeah, and then of course we had fun too. Here's us. Wikidot. If you look on their profile for their Twitter, it says Wikidot is a social platform where everyone can start a wiki, and of course we just struck out everyone because that's what they've decided to do. So it's been relatively unpopular. I won't say that it's unanimously and unilaterally sort of decried by the community. There are people in the community who think this is a good idea, but there at least were some prominent individuals that sort of brought attention to this. This is Dr. Sumerian on Twitter, saying that I'm left with more questions than answers at this, and other people sort of joining in with a little bit of memeage of it. This is Billith once again retweeting flops, saying the worst timeline. Of course, if you're just listening, this is a meme picture of someone pushing over some dominoes. The first domino, which is much smaller, says Moto42 posts SCP-173 on 4chan, and the very largest of the dominoes in the line reads Wikidot joins the international sanctions against Russia. So yeah, you have Metaphysician here. I can imagine worse, but dumber. Nobody could have come up with a dumber timeline. And you have more people saying...
Yeah, I think we can all agree this is a pretty stupid timeline in general.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, the amount of insane bullshit that has happened in the last, just 2 years, it's insane.
Yeah, it's been wild. No one could have predicted this, not even Famine Pulse here, who predicted the Russians attacking Wikidot in, I think it was a few years ago. But, the Great Hippo joins in. Wikidot may be run by some of the most oblivious motherfuckers on Earth. This literally just blocks users who don't even know how to do this shit. That is to say, hack. And so, just really great points being made here. I want to welcome Krim. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, that's actually amazing.
Yeah.
The only people that this is blocking is people who don't know, who just don't have any computer know-how.
Right.
It's blocking 90% of the revenue at a 0% increase in security. It's insane.
It's bad, and honestly, I mean, the kind of person who's going to be doing this sort of activity or this sort of malicious intent, is not going to care about things like this block. They're going to find a way around this just as surely as they found a way to get into Wikidot itself and bring it down. So it's just a really, really bad move. And you have other individuals like Nat Voltaic saying, "Oh, come the fuck on. You're not doing shit to the Russian government. You're just making things worse for the civilians, you jackasses. Pose a threat to Wikidot itself. Dude, your own servers have already been doing that for you." So there is, I think, a tremendous amount of hypocrisy in that statement from Wikidot. And Almarduk, you bring up a really good point that it could be sort of a geopolitical thing, given that they're based in Poland. I don't think their servers are based in Poland. I think they do use Amazon Web Services, but just because that's their sort of base of operations, I assume. But it's one thing. It's a very difficult thing, I think, to work through the cognitive dissonance that would arise when you try to promote yourself as being pro-human rights and being fair treatment for everybody, and then basically deny access to, two countries of individuals simply because of something that they can't control.
Yeah, if those people are in Russia, they are not fighting. They are not soldiers. They may not necessarily support the issue. Like, why?
Yeah.
That's the point. It's just a blandest gesturing. It's so bland. Even Twitter users can tell it's posturing.
Yeah, you know it's bad when you've made everybody this mad. And once again, it's nice to see people from SCP sort of unify in this, because we all appreciate the Russian branch. Obviously, the Russian branch has been through a ton, and has really been the locus of a lot of really impactful things, historical things that have happened that have really been very threatening, but have also brought the community together. And so it's nice to see. I think there's been a lot of unity lately, actually, if I could say that, about the space. First, just a while ago, there was the whole Bright thing, which I think everybody took the opportunity, most everybody, took the opportunity to sort of rally together around in a way that we don't see very commonly when it comes to that sort of unity. And then, of course, we're all in the same boat when it came to Wikidot as well. So we've had a lot of unity, I think, in the space when typically it's a very divisive place to be on the internet. So
yeah, that hasn't prevented that. We haven't achieved anything, but there was unity. I have to concede that.
Yeah, brief and fleeting.
Specifically with the Bright thing, it's just disappointing to see how nothing was done ever.
Mm-hmm.
And how nothing is being done now, and as a follow, something as to follow with the Bright thing,
right? Because
you just know this person was on staff for 11 years, 13 actually, and they were a known creep. It was a known secret that they were this way, and nothing was ever done, even though it was known by a lot of staff members that Bright had a thing for minors and behaved very weirdly around minors. And it's not just that he was a pedophile, it's that everyone allowed him to be one until it was too much to bear, and they decided to throw him out, not without struggling with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was such a failure even when they did it, because it took them so long to do it, and really their backs had to be up against the wall.
It took them so long. They so many stages of half doing it and then pretending not to know about some things.
Mm-hmm.
At first they demoted him, but only temporarily. Mm-hmm. But then made it so they kind of vetoed him from entering the site because his name was admin Bright.
Oh yeah, right.
So he couldn't join back with that same account. And then they banned him, but only temporarily. And then they finally permabanned him, pretending not to have known, not to have seen any evidence, despite everyone agreeing that Bright being a creep was an open secret. And I don't know, it's just kind of weird, because if you look back far enough, you see that everyone knows exactly how fucked up Bright is. And the fact that people who have been with him for an incredibly long time, like Dexano, like Sola Sinclair, to a man who owns the fucking site, never did anything.
No.
Never even. We have seen zero movement from them against Bright until Kiwi Farms started posting about it, until the owner of RPC made a video about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was bad, and I think it was Scantron Akumioi. Communism Will Win, who wrote on their Twitter that this is a nice thing to celebrate, but don't for a second think that this was nothing that the staff is just doing the minimum amount required for. And that's it needs a little more nuance, because there were some people on the staff who didn't know about Bright as much, sort of newer people who didn't really see the depths of what Bright was and didn't know. And there were some of those individuals who, upon learning, took it to be just so offensive and awful that they reacted, I think, the right way, just given the information that they hadn't been. But that does lead to a larger point that we don't need to talk about now. But that there's really no good method of coaching people. There's no good method of sort of informing people of the staff specifically, their own culture, and letting people know what went wrong where, because I think people would rather save face than to own up to bad decisions and work to allow those things to happen again. But just to your point, Almarduk, it's the same thing with this Wikidot situation, actually. It's the same exact picture. It's people not doing anything about something that's a giant and obvious problem that everyone knows about until it has pushed the situation into a corner, threateningly so. And we haven't yet seen a response from the SCP Wiki staff about what has happened with the Russian branch, for example, when I would expect and hope to see something from them. Because remember, these are the same individuals, it's the same entity that really, supplied the internet and social media with, campaigns and promotional campaigns and defensive campaigns for the whole Russian branch when the Andrei Duksin thing was going down. And so they were happy to do that to raise money for the legal case to defend RU. So what are they going to do now? If you're going to create a hashtag like, hashtag stand for SCP-RU, wouldn't that apply now just as much as it did, to Andrei Duksin? Just because the villain has changed, should the ideologies, should the positions change too? I think the answer is no, and I would expect to see some statement officially of support for the RU branch, and I do hope, although who's to say this is happening and who's to say that it isn't, I would hope to see individuals from the SCP Wiki staff working behind the scenes at this moment to try to, compromise with Wikidot and try to maybe, counsel them to a better decision, because the English Wiki is undoubtedly affected by the Russia branch going down for all the reasons that you already said, Almarduk.
Yeah, I think that right now they are doing something like that, but I have no way to know, because there's also the policy freeze and all of the other stuff being discussed right now, and as a result of the outage. So I think it's too early to say that they are doing nothing. I think that's just too hasty, because it's been like 2 days, and give them like a week maybe. Knowing how slow staff can be, I think it's only fair.
Yeah, and so that's a good word. So thank you for that. And so we'll be in the lookout for that, because I do hope that they have something to say, and I think that they have enough weight to pull Wikidot, to pull the dev team and Michael Frekowiak, because Wikidot basically is SCP. I mean, I'm not trying to minimize or truncate out the other containment fiction communities that we all know and love and participate in as well. But, just when it comes to Wikidot's view of itself, it really only sees SCP. And so I think if enough of a unified voice comes from SCP to Wikidot, I think that they'll be able to change some things. I do hope, at least. So, we'll be on the lookout for that for sure. And then while we're talking about it, just a quick visit to 05. Nothing much is going on because of the freeze, obviously. The charter discussion, I think, looks a little silly in light of what happened this past week, just in terms of prioritization and allocating resources to where they actually need to be going. Once again, no one really cares about the charter rewrite. No one actually thinks it's going to fix anything except the people who are working on it. Now, I did want to mention this, Almarduk. In the past, you'd said that this is really never, ever going to work, and if they continue this sort of crowd-sourced approach to the rewrite, and it does seem as though nothing has been done. They're sort of tired of nothing having been done. They declined to sustain the policy freeze because they felt like nothing was actually happening and it was pointless to extend a policy freeze. And it looks as though from this post they have actually gathered a smaller team of individuals who will focus on, as they call it, the nitty-gritty of writing out the charter. They list some people.
Yeah,
to
that's
write these
good.
things out.
That
Yeah.
might actually like get it done.
Yeah, and I think it will. So this post came out on the morning that Wikidot went down, and so discussion about this was certainly interrupted and has picked up in the last couple of days with people approving this. So I think this is a good step. I know you agree, Almarduk, because this is the point you've been making for the last month about this topic. So hopefully they'll be making a little more progress when it comes to this. But once again, I think the bigger thing to see is that there are much more pressing issues facing the existential crises, the existential concerns of something like the SCP Wiki, besides a charter rewrite, which is essentially a way for the staff to reconcile their own inability to abide by their own rules. This goes all the way back to the Cerastes incident as well. So we've said enough about that.
Good God, what a nightmare.
Yeah,
It just never ends, does
It's
it?
bad. Yeah, they need, at least they're making a step in the right direction. They've gone so far in the wrong one. It's I don't know whether to just not care about it or to celebrate it, but they have started to take a step back in the right direction. So maybe this will shake them. Maybe the occurrence with Wikidot will wake them up out of their own little bubble and try to think about what's the best for the actual community, as opposed to this charter rewrite, which is only serving themselves, quite honestly. We have other people, just back to Twitter real quick before we wrap things up here today. Other people commenting on the Russia situation, trying to sort of amplify it, promote it a little more. People making good points. For example, what Fracowiak doesn't get, however, is that this can easily be solved with a VPN. A hacker can get by with no problems, just making life hell for the SCP-RU and its members. So it's, once again, nice to see all these people. The Great Hippo is not done saying that this is true. This is just the silliest shit. It sucks for everyone else. It's a symbolic act. Like, who does this actually benefit? I do see other people arguing for the other side. So here's a nice little poll that was done. It had about 150 votes. Overwhelming majority of people saying that this was a bad decision to block Russia and Belarus. Some people thought it was a good decision, and then about a quarter of the people thought they're not really that sure. But you do have people in this comment thread sort of defending the idea, saying that it's supposed to be about pressuring people to be displeased with their own government actions. But that's really a little too forceful of a coercion method, in my opinion.
Yeah, also the people that write, the people that spend their lives like inside and at the computer writing, they are not going to pressure the Russian government. They are not that kind of person.
No.
Just
I mean,
like
what
that
power
ain't
do
it.
they have?
It's not going to help.
No, they can't do a thing. So yeah, this is just a very, very, I think, misguided decision that's based on some political sensitivities that have some legitimacy to them for sure, but ultimately was not very well thought out. And maybe it was the Wikidot team trying to update their own sort of political servers, the sort of ethical stances on things, and just kind of get with the times while they're at it. I don't know, but this is Phantom, longtime SCP author, well known, who says this goes beyond throwing the baby out with the bathwater. This is punting the baby out of the window and letting the full tub of stagnant water breed mosquitoes in your yard. And so that's a good way to put it, because I think that this has been almost a universally derided decision, particularly from the SCP community.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, and then just to wrap things out with, I thought there was a few other things from Twitter that I thought was interesting. This is a fan art of SCP-5761, which is the second installment of the Among Us articles from Tanhoney. And I just wanted to point out just how impossible it would be to understand that this is an SCP article. Obviously, that's not the case for all art. You can't derive or deduce that it's an SCP from the art, but this particularly so, because if you look at this is obviously just fan art of Among Us. So the only thing different is maybe the number up here, and I guess maybe the setting, if you want to talk about the context of the actual article. But I think a lot of people had issues with this sort of mimetic forwardness when it comes to prominent articles on the wiki, and I think this actually captures it pretty well. This is completely indistinguishable from just fan art of the game itself. And then this was.
I
Go ahead.
despise that art,
I
and
know.
I despise that article, but
I know you do.
whatever.
Yeah, I think it's bad too. I think it's funny because Harmony wrote an article for the magazine that sort of took a broad scope over time and cast that article, those two articles, the two Among Us articles, as in some ways a real turning point for the wiki, and not a good one. It's sort of like beyond the event horizon, a threshold that was crossed that should never have been crossed. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
yeah, really an interesting way to sort of define big turns in the history of the wiki. So, and then this was another post. This is Niagros, who I think we all know, author on the SCP Wiki. Low-key, I stopped writing for the wiki regularly because my stuff for Deepwell became a kind of in-joke for authors to laugh at for a while. I wanted for years to finish storylines I started, but my pride in my work has been degraded to the point of apathy. That's not a great thing to see. If you want to read this Twitter thread, obviously you can go to Nagiros, I'm not saying this correctly, their Twitter. But you might notice that the Admonition series is part of the Deepwell sort of hub. And so,
Oh yeah, it is.
yeah, so it's interesting to note that that hub was actually created, I guess, from reading this by this author, and then Admonition is sort of a subset of it. And this post about it said, ever since Admonition started, people have been talking about Deepwell positively, which is good, but there's a trade-off, even if I'm willing to make it. Kind of weird that I found out Deepwell was being included in Meta Foundation when I saw a tweet promoting the project. And then later goes on to say, I don't know, Admonition is cool, but I worry it misses the point. So this was, I thought, was just an interesting thing to look at and read and get some commentary behind the scenes about some of the more prominent movements on the SCP Wiki that are happening right now. And just how it's a shame, I think, that an author can feel this way. And we do a fair amount of criticism about particular articles. I think me and Almarduk both would probably have plenty of things to say about, for example, Admonition and the entirety of the hub. But I think I speak for both of us when I say we don't mean for it to be to the point where people just get so degraded that they don't want to write anymore. And that's not really the point of the criticism critique. It's hopefully just to point out where we think things went wrong and have philosophical differences on these things. So I do want to kind of hold up Nagrios and wish them well, because it's a shame to see someone who is I guess letting the opinions of others take such a hold on what should be such a personal experience of writing something like this.
Yeah, I continuously criticize a lot of Deepwell and Nagiros's work, but I hope. I don't think they've read me. I don't think they care. I don't think they know I exist. But
right.
In case they have, just in case, I hope it hasn't come off as a personal attack, some bullying, because when I write my criticisms, I do them in good faith. I do it hoping that it will result in better writing and better authors. And I feel kind of guilty because I've been a part of this degradation of Deepwell a lot, because I have always seen it as an example of a lot of writing trends that I dislike personally. And well, I think it's hard to forget the degree of talent that goes into this kind of writing, regardless of regardless if it's good or not at the end. There was some real effort and real talent put into it that is always important to appreciate, even if, well, you just get caught up writing more criticisms and more commentary.
Yeah, it's a lot like what we do just reviewing the articles from the SCP Wiki, for example. I mean, not everyone is going to, elicit a positive response, from someone like me, for example. But underneath all of that, the deeper thing is that I'm just really excited to read even bad instances of containment fiction, because I do love containment fiction so much. So, I mean, I would obviously rather be reading, containment fiction, whether it's, excellent or sort of average or even, below average. I still would rather be reading that than, other forms of fiction. Not exclusively, obviously, but just there is that underneath it. So, yeah, I think the job of the critic, I think, is, you have to be honest with yourself and with the person who you're talking to. And, if you if you pay too much attention to how someone may be upset about the feelings that come from doing that, you really have lost your purpose. So I think that as long as we are focused on the work, what we think is wrong about the work, and we try to do our best. It's hard sometimes because people obviously have a lot of identification with their own articles. It's really hard to separate the author from the work in some places, but I think it is important to do that where we can. And I certainly once again do wish Nagrios well. I don't think that you should be so caught up in other people's opinions of you, whether it's criticism or praise, to where it can either destroy your desire to write or be your desire to write. I think that once again this goes back to something we've said a lot of, which is it should be really the author's own standards that guide the process of writing, and whether people's reaction to it, whether it's good, whether it's bad, that's sort of the icing on the cake. That's sort of the secondary thing. And so on the one hand, it's good to avoid that sort of critique that sort of can get somebody to be completely deposed from writing. But on the other hand, if you're a writer, if you're an author, this is what the craft is. You've got to have the ability to hold up what you want to say and do against other people's pushback. That's just part of it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I regret about the way I am, about the way I crit, is that I'm usually not very close to the people I critique, and I am very bad at praise and encouraging people if I'm not in close contact with them. I think that's something I should. That's a good thing to take away. Being nicer, even if it's a little bit of sugarcoating. If your critique just gets someone to stop writing, then it's not a successful critique.
Yeah, I mean, part of that, like I said, is on their end. But, something I've noticed in talking about these articles, on something like the show we did last night, I've noticed that it's a lot easier to be very rude on the written word. And when I get around to speaking what I've written, like the notes, I'll sort of like hesitate and be like, okay, well, now that I say that out loud, it comes off as a little mean. So, I'm probably guilty of that too. Just a nice thing to keep in mind. I'll say this though, no one likes a really good article better than me. I think when the time comes when an article actually meets the expectations that I have and the standards that I personally like to apply to containment fiction, no one's going to praise that article more than I do. And the example I'll give is Stormbreath's recent post, which I think was SCP 6455. Which was the recommendation this time last week, and we did about an hour coverage of that on our show last Friday. And there's nothing that I love more than praising an article that does a really, really good job. The other side of that coin is that no one's going to be more upset and curt, sort of forward hitting than me. People like me. When it comes to
you certainly have a word for both praise and criticism.
Yeah.
You have a very particular tongue.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, I think it's important, obviously, to use that for praise too, because some of the things that we read on the wiki are just stellar. They're just so damn good. Anybody who says the SCP doesn't have good content coming out from it, isn't reading it. There's a lot of good stuff. It's buried. But that's part of the purpose of the show, is to bring out what we're doing is to bring out the really, really good ones and give them the attention that they deserve. Kind of like our recommendations today, so go check those out. And then the last thing we'll do today is, this kind of ties into what we're talking about. This is once again the Great Hippo on Twitter saying, the hilarious thing about SCP articles is that so many long-timers treat them like a fine wine, getting into detailed discussions about their bouquet, their nose, when they're the fictional equivalent of bootleg rot gut your neighbor makes in his motorhome. So, yeah, I mean, that's true as well. I think there's people here who kind of push back a little bit in a playful way. So this individual, for example, says, I bridle at the implication that your average Penguin publication approved by an executive who drives a Porsche is inherently better alcohol than a horror short written by a sweaty trans kid in a basement. So that's kind of where I live right there. I don't really buy into the whole thing that, if you're a published author, you're somehow more accomplished than someone who just wants to use that talent for something like the SCP Wiki. I think that's just a false sort of outdated way of looking at things. Yeah, so I mean that's one of the reasons why I do this. I mean this is me right here. You know, I sit there and I wax poetic about an article and how it has legs or how it's Teutonic, you know, or whatever. Like this is me in a nutshell. But I love doing it, and yeah, that's really why I do this stuff. I appreciate everybody's views and participation, but this all comes down to the fact that I love doing this. I love reading containment fiction, and that's why I pay so much attention and put so much energy and effort into things like critique and praise when it's appropriate too. But yeah, the Great Hippo is got me on a microscope slide right there.
Yeah, but like, I have to remember, read some normal fiction once in a while, like some good stuff that's known to be good, and you'll realize the scale of what SCP is as a site.
You know, I'd love
the
to
scale,
have
the actual magnitude of the quality.
I'd love to have a section on like the magazine or something like that does a book review that's not anything to do with containment fiction, but is like, hey, you know, here's an example of some good other poetry, other literature that you might draw some inspiration from. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's nice to get some perspective. You got to dip your head out every once in a while, otherwise you just get a little too tunnel visioned and things like that. So, good word. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate y'all hanging out with us today. We had a little bit longer of a show than usual, but once again, this was a historic week, so I do appreciate y'all being here and contributing to the discussion. This is available as a podcast called Confic Calling. No, thank you, and very, very happy to have you. So look for that podcast on all podcasting platforms after this show, probably tomorrow. And so we will get back to reacting within the week, just to podcasts and other media. So check that out on the Twitch. And be sure to check our Friday show where we go through all of the SCPs released that week, and as we've been talking about, do some sort of critique, some sort of review about that. Otherwise, we will see you hopefully here next week, Saturday, for our main show, which this is SCP Meta. And I want to thank you very, very much for coming by. This has been SCP-CRNP, aka Lack of Lepers. You also heard Almarduk. And I want to thank you again to the other participants, Jane Bond, Krim, and Soraya, for coming by as well. So y'all have a great, great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me. See ya.